So good day everyone. For today we're going to tackle about the commonly cultured species in the Philippines and their production. So aquaculture in the Philippines has a long history and involves many species farming practices in diverse ecosystem. Most of the production comes from the farming of milkfish, seaweed, tilapia, carp, shrimp, oyster, and mussels. Aquaculture contributes significantly to the country's food security, employment, and foreign exchange earnings. Aquaculture is growing much faster than capture fisheries. The future growth of the Philippine aquaculture may not be sustained unless new markets are developed. Market competitiveness is strengthened and farming risks are reduced. In this age of international trade and competition, the Philippine aquaculture industry needs to plan and implement a development and management program with a global perspective. The Philippine government and the private sector are in the process of preparing a national fisheries and development plan which include aquaculture. And there are seven major aquaculture species in the Philippines. Thus is seaweed, milkfish, tilapia, shrimp, carp, oyster, and mussel. So there are three commonly fishes cultured in the Philippines, and that is milkfish, tilapia, and carp. Milkfish or Chados chanos. The backbone of the Philippine aquaculture is how bangus farming has been regarded by most fishery experts. Milkfish or Chanos chanos belongs to the Chanidae family, which nearly related to tuna and salmon because of its fusiform shapes and migratory nature. It is widely distributed in the Indo-Pacific region and abundantly collected in South and Southeast Asian and West Pacific regions. Milkfish is popularly cultured in the Philippines because it is a better food converter species. It is cultured in brackish water pens, and cages. In terms of fry supply, fish farmers are entirely dependent on fry collected along the coastlines during the breeding season. However, the problem of the unstable natural fry supplies due to changes in environmental conditions, fluctuation in natural recruitment, and coastal population pollution hinders the expansion of milkfish in industry. It is generally accepted that the earliest fish pond were brackish water growing milkfish using naturally occurring fry from tidal waters. For a very long time, aquaculture in the Philippines was virtually synonymous with milkfish culture, specifically in brackish water ponds, relying total on natural food. So, species-wide production of milkfish. Milkfish production has increased steadily the last years with annually production numbers around 400,000 metric ton. These figures are in line with local figures from the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or in short, BFOR. In the past, the Philippines was the world's top producer of milkfish, but due to the production constraints, Indonesia has now taken the top spot. These production figures only show a 3% increase in production over the 5 years as the available locations suited for brackish water pen system are limited. For these reasons, there is a major shift taking place in production type from brackish water pens to marine fish cages. Also, since the natural government has recently started closing down a large number of fish pens in the vicinity of Manila, production figures are expected to show a little growth in the near future. Furthermore, around 50% of the fry used in farming operation is imported from Indonesia, and this nation is considering an export ban of milkfish fry in order to support its own farming industry. If this would happen, a sharp decline in milkfish production is expected. So next we're going to discuss about the production per region. The Philippines uses a system of numbered regions as shown in the figure above. Each of these regions is made up of several provinces. Most national government agencies like the BFOR operate a main office and collect statistics per region. Since most of the milkfish is produced for local consumption and sold directly at local markets, the production volumes, or rather equally spread throughout different regions in the Philippines. The western and central Visayas and northern Mindanao are the top producers because these regions offer large areas of suitable brackish water habitats. A few landlocked regions, the capital region, and a few small island regions produce a little no milkfish. Next is the export production of milkfish. From 2012 to 2016. As milkfish products do not have a specific HS code, Bureau of Agricultural Statistics use instead of trade map figures. However, Bureau of Aquaculture Statistics most recent figures from 2016 and only show the total export numbers, not country-wise. Just a small percentage from the production is exported, and the volume has been stable the recent years, counting between 3 to 4,000 metric ton. According to Bureau of Agriculture and Statistics, figures from 2010, which is also show country-wise exports numbers, the U.S. is 3,411 metric tons, is by far the largest export market, followed by Canada, which is 634 metric tons. Other countries of interest are the UK, Korea, Guam, Hong Kong, and Hawaii, which imported around 40 to 60 metric tons each. In the United States, milkfish consumers are Filipinos that have been living in the country for several generations, while in the markets of Canada, Hong Kong, Korea, and Guam, the demand is driven by so-called overseas Filipino workers or OFWs. Smaller volumes are exported to serve or overseas workers from Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, region who are mainly because in the United Kingdom. So, milkfish farming has been and will remain the backbone of the Philippine aquaculture. To date, over 260,000 hectares of brackish water ponds, 6,700 hectares of freshwater ponds, and about 500 hectares of marine ponds and cages are used to culture this fish. Average milkfish is about 2 kg or 7.5% of the total fish, 26.8 kg per capita consumed by every Filipino. By the year 2020, the population is projected to reach 112 million and will require 224,000 metric tons of milkfish. If production growth rate is maintained at 2.3%, an estimated 4,000 metric ton will be produced by the year 2020, generating surplus production of close to 200,000 metric tons. The development of value-added production from surplus produced will be needed to enhance acceptability of milkfish in the export market and the changing food preference of younger generations. Milkfish is the most widely cultured and consumed fish in the Philippines. Thousands of aquaculture operators are engaged in this industry, ranging from small-scale family enterprises to large corporations. The smaller producers are responsible for the majority of the country's production, but they only produce milkfish for the domestic market since their traceability and quality standards are not sufficient. The export of milkfish from the Philippines is dominated by a handful of the large Filipino-owned companies that farm, process, and export their produce themselves. By doing this, these companies are able to keep production costs minimal in this low-margin seafood commodity. Additionally, by controlling the supply chain, they are able to ensure traceability and quality standard needed to export to demand markets like the European Union. Milkfish products are mostly exported to markets with a large population of overseas workers and migrants from Southeast Asian nations. Popular products lines in this market includes frozen fillets and frozen whole milkfish. Milkfish are cultured in a wide range of environments using a variety of culture methods. Seed stock are sometimes wild capture, but in most cases originate from hatcheries. In fisheries and brackish water environments, milkfish are cultured in fish ponds and pans, while in marine environments, milkfish are cultured in floating cages and occasionally in pens. The number hand, the culture of milkfish in floating cages at sea is booming since plenty of suitable locations are available. Also, milkfish cultured in a marine environment tastes better and fetch higher prices. Although the annual total production volume and export of milkfish has remained stable in the past few years, the volume of farm high quality milkfish has been increasing significantly. This trend is expected to continue in the coming years as both local and overseas consumers are becoming more demanding. So next we're going to discuss about tilapia or Euchromis niloticus production. So tilapia are the most cultured freshwater fish in the Philippines, and they are listed second in culture volume after milkfish. Until the early 1990s, the Philippines was globally the top producer of tilapia, and most of it was produced for domestic consumption. Since then, many countries have developed their tilapia industry to take advantage of the booming international demand for fillet tilapia. The Philippines completely missed out in this opportunity. The country has not really developed or professionalized its tilapia industry and is still producing for the domestic market only. In 2016, the country produced 259,045 metric tons of tilapia by means of aquaculture, of which approximately a mere of 60 metric tons was exported. According to the Philippine Statistic Authority, the majority of tilapia production is produced by small family business that operate one or two ponds or cages. Only few bigger companies engage in large-scale tilapia production, operating integrated supply chains. The supply chain is characterized by a lack of transparency and few quality controls. Some large producers with integrated supply chains produce larger sized tilapias in a more controlled fashion and with suitable traceability and quality control measures in place. Their tilapia is mostly processed into fillets for retailers that serve the domestic markets. These companies are also responsible for the country's limited tilapia exports. In both the countrysides and in urban centers, tilapia is an important and cheap source of animal protein for families with limited spending power. With an estimated population of 20 million people, Manila and surrounding cities are the country's largest market for tilapia. For this season, the main tilapia producing provinces are located around the capital region. So tilapia production and export statistics. The major of Philippine tilapia is produced for the domestic markets. There are hardly any exports. The few tilapia that get exported end up in markets like Korea, Austria, and the United States. A number of different species and varieties are being cultured, but they are all commonly referred to as tilapia. And neither the farmers nor official figures make a distinction between the different tilapia species or varieties that are being cultured. Tilapia are mostly cultured in the freshwater environments, but some strains are also cultured in brackish or saltwater habitats. The total production of tilapia by means of aquaculture production remains stable over the past 5 years, and however, around 260,000 metric tons annually. These figures provided by FAO seem accurate since local figures by the Bureau of Fishery and Aquaculture Resources or BFAR show similar production figures with little innovation or change in the Philippine tilapia sector. Productions is likely to remain stable in the coming years. Interestingly, although tilapia is not native, they are commonly caught by our artisanal fishermen. The BFAR has been actively releasing tilapia fingerlings in rivers and lakes around the country for many years, and tilapia landings from the fisheries have shown an increasing trend in the past 5 years from 47.4 metric ton in 2012 to 41.7 metric ton in 2016. Production by province in 2016. The Philippines uses a system of numbered regions as shown in the figure below. Each of these regions is made up of several provinces. Most national government agencies like BIFAR operate a main office collect statistics per region. Since most of the tilapia is produced for local consumption and sold directly to local markets, tilapia is produced throughout the different regions in the Philippines. The low-lying provinces north of the capital region like Central Luzon and south of the capital region like Calabarzon are the producers because these regions offer large areas suitable freshwater pond habitat and because these provinces are located near the Philippines' biggest market for tilapia, the capital region. Tilapia is one of the most commercially important commodities in the fishery and aquaculture. Although tilapia is relatively easy to propagate and culture, the Philippine tilapia industry needs to necessarily boost the quality and quantity of the production outputs. Years of local tilapia R&D works have generated several innovative field-tested breeding and farming methods which when adopted on farm may help the tilapia industry attain its goals. So next, or carp production. Pioneered the research and development of the culture and artificial propagation of the bighead carp in the Philippines. Bighead carp has become a major aquaculture species of Laguna de Bay primarily because of the efforts of the station. Common carp was introduced in the Philippines from Hong Kong in 1915. Other species of carps were later introduced. Their culture in fish pens and cages started in second half of 1980s. The Philippine government has long tried to promote carp culture by establishing hatcheries in several regions, but they never became popular due to the relatively low consumer acceptability. Many Filipinos do not find carp palatable, but bighead carp or Aristectis nubilis has recently become a dominant species in Laguna Lake fish pens. Most of the carp recent produced is bighead carp from freshwater pens of Laguna Lake, the country's largest lake. Bighead carp does not require expensive feeds and very high production can be achieved in a small area. So next is commonly cultured seaweeds in the Philippines. So seaweeds belong to the genus Caulerpa are all eaten fresh in many parts of the Philippines. C. lentiliifera was the first species to be commercially cultivated in brackish water fish pans in Cebu in early 1950s. As a response to strong world demand of phytocolloid carrageenan, the farming of Eucheuma was developed in 1960s. Seaweed species, particularly Kappa ficus and Eucheuma sp, have been farmed throughout the country since the early 1970s. In 2017, the Philippines produced 1.4 million tons and exported 35,490 tons of seaweed and carrageenan with a value of $174 million. Correct. Kappa ficus and Eucheuma sp. Kappa ficus is one of the most significant economically valuable reed seaweeds cultivated in tropical and subtropical waters. This alga demands a relatively high market value globally due to the application of the Kappa carrageenan colloid that is industrially extracted from the biomass. Carrageenan is widely used in food, pharmaceuticals, and nutraceuticals and for aquaculture applications. The first successful commercial cultivation of Kappa ficus, previously called Eucheuma, was recorded from the southern Philippines in late 1960s using the line and stake methods. Eucheuma and Kappa ficus are important carragenophytes and account for over 80% of world's carrageenan production. These stocks are abundant in the Philippines, tropical Asia, East Asia, and the Western Pacific region. Of more than 24 species known, only Kappa ficus alvarezi or Doti, formerly known as Eucheuma cottoni, and Eucheuma denticulatum are of major commercial importance. During the last 30 years, these species have been successfully introduced to more than 20 countries for commercial cultivation. The thallus of Eucheuma and Capaphycus are cartilaginous, cylindrical to compress and branch. Production of Capaphycus. Development and production technology of Capaphycus in the Philippines, more than 4 decades of farming. Dramatic production increase were achieved with the Philippines being the leading producer of Capaphycus for more than 30 years until it was overtaken by Indonesia in approximately 2008. By 1988, Capaphycus farming became widespread in Indonesia, and efforts have been undertaken to spread Capaphycus farming to more than 30 countries worldwide. Since 2008, Capaphycus production steadily rose in Indonesia, but production from the Philippines has tended to decline since 2011. So, research and development initiatives focusing on Capaphycus in the Philippines emphasize the means to increase productivity and solution to issues causing declining production. R&D focusing on Capaphycus cultivars in the Philippines was made through the National Seaweed R&D program. Several institutions and research centers took major steps to achieve these objectives. A recent development in Capaphycus farming was the discovery that use of an extract from brown seaweed acts as a biostimulant to improve tolerance of cultivars to abiotic stresses. Problems and challenges encountered in the production of Capaphycus even after more than 40 years of farming, but which needed to be overcome, are discussed. Caulerpa lentillifera or lato. Caulerpa lentillifera is a species of bryopsidale green algae from coastal regions in the Indo-Pacific. This seaweed is one of the favorite species of edible Caulerpa due to its soft and succulent texture. It is traditionally eaten in the cuisines of Southeast Asia, Oceania, and East Asia. Its cultivation has since spread to other countries including Japan, Vietnam, Taiwan, and China. Caulerpa lentillifera, along with C. racemosa, are also known as sea grapes or green caviar in English. Traditionally, Caulerpa lentillifera were harvested directly from the wild. The first commercial cultivation of C. lentillifera was in 1950s in Cebu, Philippines, after accidental introduction of C. lentillifera to fish ponds. Currently, there are around 400 hectares of ponds in the Cebu, producing around 12 to 15 tons of fresh C. lentillifera per year. They are usually harvested or 2 months from first planting and every 2 weeks afterwards, depending on growth rates. C. lentillifera production. C. lentillifera is cultivated in about 400 hectares of ponds in Mactan, Cebu province, and production is estimated at no less than 4,000 tons fresh weight per year, with more than 90% being produced during the dry months. No recent statistics on the export of fresh Caulerpa are available. The export of 827 tons of C. lentillifera is registered for 1982. Commercial aquaculture in Philippines started in the early 1950s on the island of Mactan. In Japan, commercial cultivation of C. lentillifera started in 1986 in the tropical waters of Okinawa province. A 1-year feasibility study has shown that 12 to 15 tons of fresh C. lentillifera can be produced annually in a 1 hectare pond. In the Philippines, the retail price in 1995 was 20 pesos per kilo. Return in investment has been calculated at 15% during the first year and double this amount for the succeeding years. So next, Miss Seppi, we're going to tackle the commonly cultured mollusk in the Philippines.